Meanwhile, South Africa currently faces a few more years of power cuts as the move towards renewable power is taking longer than planned. Well, earlier this year, Wits University researchers looked at what's been in plan, for 12 years in the making at this point. Joining us is one of those authors, Julia Taylor, a visiting researcher with the Southern Centre for Inequality Studies. A very good evening to you, Julia. Good to have your time tonight. So, I don't know if you were able to hear that report that we just came out of from the COP conference underway in Dubai. I wonder how crucial that is to watch at this moment in light of the conversation in South Africa about getting the right energy mix and in particular the issue of renewables.
Good evening, Tembagile. Thanks for having me. Yes, I think the news from COP28 is very exciting. But interestingly, even though it's a progress, it's many commentators are saying that the pledges made so far are a drop in the ocean. The kind of estimated need for loss and damage to climate change presently is $400 billion per year. And so the current pledges are below $100 billion. So there's a lot that still needs to happen on pledges for finance for loss and damage. But in terms of mitigation and adaptation, there's interestingly separate mechanisms to fund mitigation, which is about reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, and adaptation, which is about kind of addressing infrastructure and water conservation as climate impacts increase.
Mm. And on
sorry.
Please finish your point. Apologies.
So my main point is just that while loss and damage is a huge win, we still have not enough funding for mitigation and adaptation. And so the big message, I think, from African countries at COP28 must be that this funding has to be additional and cannot replace mitigation and adaptation or kind of take away from mitigation and adaptation finance.
And on the issue of renewables, then, just having looked at what you guys have pulled together as researchers, you mentioned or you speak quite a bit about investment and how that is key in making sure that the sort of correct speed is applied to South Africa's march in that direction. Why haven't we seen more of the right sort of investment?
Yes, that's exactly right. So we conducted some research on the existing renewable energy procurement program in South Africa, which started 12 years ago. And while it had some early successes, we found that as it carried on, it came across many barriers. Some of the barriers include the fact that it failed to kind of generate the local development of renewable energy technologies, which it hoped to do. And that was for a number of reasons, one of which was that the prices were just very difficult to match in terms of international imports. So local manufacturing wasn't really stimulated as much as we'd like. There were also significant delays in the project. So between 2015 and 2019, no new projects were approved. And that was because of kind of political tensions at the time. And so even in the recent bid windows, which are when Eskom kind of calls for new bids from private producers to produce more renewable electricity, there have been constraints in terms of our grid capacity. So even if we have new renewable energy that is ready to come onto the grid itself is a massive barrier to increasing our renewable energy capacity.
And when we talk about this issue of investment, getting it to go towards the right things, you mentioned the issue of cost. And when we speak about renewables, it tends to be in very broad strokes. So where exactly is the money going?
Sure. So the cost of renewables has actually come down significantly over the past 12 years. And that's interestingly one of the reasons that our recent bid window, I think it's bid window 6, has not actually ended up constructing as much renewable as planned, because there's been volatility in the price of renewables. So when the bid was put together, they had a certain amount per kilowatt hour for the renewable energy that cost. And so that was quite low. But then with the kind of Ukraine crisis and various electricity issues internationally, the prices of gas, oil, and even renewables has gone up. And so it's been very difficult to actually start the construction of those projects who were kind of underselling in a way. But what I think we really found in the research was that the REAP program was successful kind of at the start of the renewable energy technology industry. We needed government guarantees to ensure that private investors would invest because there was a lot of uncertainty in the field. But now actually there's a lot more certainty around renewable energy. Private investors, we've also seen, are taking the initiative to kind of build renewable energy on their own because of regulatory shifts in the last year. And so the renewable energy procurement program from Eskom really needs to be rethought and revised so that it can continue to procure and build renewable energy, but kind of avoid these issues with pricing and attracting the right investment.
The other issue that's caused a lot of awkward moments, even in cabinet, has been around how is it that we phase in more renewable energy and how do we phase out, for example, coal? The Minerals Minister, Gwede Mantashe, is saying that we should not, in the rush to become greener, end up in a scenario where the process to phase out coal, for instance, is done in a way that is blind, so to speak, to South Africa's socio-economic context. Can the two exist parallel?
I think they have to. The real issue is that we can't turn off any electricity until we have a stable electricity supply to meet our national needs. At the moment, the load shedding crisis is kind of getting worse, and we don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. So we really need to make sure that we have kind of security of electricity supply. But that actually means expanding electricity in terms of renewable energy. It is one of the lowest cost options at the moment. So we need to expand renewable energy alongside kind of a very planned and carefully managed decommissioning of coal power plants over a long period. So I think, there's no chance that we can turn off any of our coal power stations kind of in the next 5 years unless it was planned to already. And we have to consider the impact of the livelihoods for people who are dependent on the coal value chain. So there's a really important management aspect that the government really needs to take on in planning this transition so that it is a just transition.
Julia Taylor, really good to speak to you. Thank you so much. Julia Taylor, a visiting researcher with the Southern Centre for Inequality Studies, talking to us about renewables at the start of the COP climate conference underway in Dubai from today.